BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I know people are dragging this morning. The weather's not the best, but we're going to go ahead with the agenda. Thank you so much. First of all, let me announce pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place on Wednesday, July 14, 2010 at 9:15 a.m. This meeting will take place at 198 East 161st Street, 3rd floor, DA Litigation Room in the Bronx. We have two items on the agenda, and we're going to reverse their order. The first item will be the maintenance and understanding of the rules and regulations of our parks, and the second item will be a demonstration of the new poll site voting system. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Lawrence Scones, Chief of Operations, and William Cardoza, Bronx Captain of Park Enforcement of the New York City Department of Parks, to come forth. Thank you. Where are they to sit? Use the podium. Use the podium,
okay. So my name is Larry Scoons. I'm the Chief of Operations for Parks. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay. I don't know if everybody knows me. I know a number of people in the room, but I've been with Parks for about 25 years now. I've worked in the Bronx, I've worked in Manhattan and Staten Island, done a lot of different things, worked with the Urban Park Rangers when I started, and then moved into maintenance about 20 years ago. So I've had kind of a variety of experiences in the Parks Department in different places and doing different stuff. For about the last 2 years, I've been the Chief of Operations here in the Bronx. I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what we do. We have about 7,000 acres of parks. It's 7,073 acres of parks in the Bronx. We have 199 playgrounds. At 102 of those, there are basketball sites. Baseball fields. At 132 of them, there are basketball courts. We have 7 regular-sized swimming pools and 2 mini pools. So far this year, we've had 100,000 people visit the pools. We also have Orchard Beach. We've had 450,000 people visit it so far this year. It's been a hot year. I could have put all this into a PowerPoint presentation, but when I was in college, my freshman year, I took art history at 9 o'clock in the morning. They used to come in and turn all the lights off, put on a bunch of slides, and within about 15 minutes, half the class was... So I don't really believe in PowerPoint presentations in the morning. Now, to take care of all of those facilities that I was talking about, we have 356 full-time employees. That includes all of the people who are supervisors and managers. It includes all of the office people, the tradesmen who do the repair of things, the foresters who do all of the tree work. It's everybody in maintenance, 356 full-time. This summer, we were able to hire 172 seasonal employees. That's for all of the, pardon? 172. That includes all of the people working at the pools and all the people at the beach and the few that I was able to sprinkle out into the districts. We also have kind of the bulk of our workforce right now, just a little bit over 600 job training participants. Those are the temporary welfare to work people who work for 6 months with us and get job training. Those 600 people have an average, availability of about 50%. That's when you look at their training components, their personal needs and absences. They're about 50% available to us. So unfortunately it's not a lot of people that take care of all of that property. I do have 3 crews that go around at night and lock up parks. We lock up 72 sites every night. In the summer, as you can imagine, it's tough to get around when it's getting dark and get to all of those sites, but we push them along. When I got here, we were locking up about 40 sites. I've been increasing that every year since I've been here, and I'm hoping to get it up to about 90 sites by this time next year. We've found that locking places up at night is a very effective tool for curbing unwanted use and also for helping us minimize vandalism and other bad things that happen when people really shouldn't be in our properties. Last year we had about 1,400 special event permits issued. This year we've already done over 1,000, so we're probably going to hit 2,000 this year. So I think you have a sense of where this is going in the demand world. Some of you are already kind of familiar with our parks inspection program. That's like an internal audit unit that goes out and inspects our properties based on 16 different cleanliness and structural parameters. They look at whether a place has litter, whether it has glass or graffiti, weeds, and then they look at how well safe it is and how well the structures are holding up, whether the play equipment is safe, whether the rubber safety surface is still resilient, whether the sidewalks are cracked or have uplifts, all of those things that would be dangerous for people. So in the fiscal year we just finished, June 30th, we were 84.1% overall condition acceptable. Our ratings are either acceptable or unacceptable. There's no A, B, C, D grade. That's up 2% from last fiscal year. It's also better than every other borough except Staten Island. I'm very proud of this. In the cleanliness parameter, we reached 89% this year. That's up 3% from last year, and it's doing what we do. A little more with less. That's also on a par or up from every other borough but Staten Island. Every other borough either stayed where they were this year or went down. I can attribute some of this to all of the major capital work that went on in the borough this year and new sites that we've opened up, but a lot of it has to do with managing our resources as best as we can. Obviously, we don't, as I mentioned, have an excess of people. We weren't able to hire as many people this year. We don't have as many of those transitional employees this year. We're about 200 down from the count we would have been at this month last year. So we're doing the job. I mean, we're not doing a perfect job. If you go to a place on a Sunday morning in a hot day, you will probably find litter before we get a chance to clean it up. But we're taking care of business. We are cleaning places. We're making them safe. We are making sure that children have a good, healthy place to go and play and get some exercise. And we're trying to respond as quickly as we can to any complaints that we get from people. In the enforcement world, we have a very, very limited staff. Captain Cardoza is going to come up and talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I'm going to tell you that he has very few people that are at his discretion to move from site to site. Most of his staff is assigned to either a pool or a recreation center or to Orchard Beach because those are the areas where there's the most potential for something bad to happen. So we have to keep people there full time. In the scheme of things, we would love to have more of everything. It's not realistic for us to be expecting it to happen anytime soon. So, Captain, if you would like to come up and maybe just give a little thumbnail view of what our deployment is currently, and maybe talk about what will be like after Labor Day.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chief Scoontz. Just to follow up and piggyback on what the Chief was mentioning, as he had said, my resources are very limited. Again, over 7,000 acres to patrol, to maintain, to provide security for everybody. It's a great task for me to come out with and bring out a plan. Currently, right now, there's only 7 full-time PEP officers. Out of the 7, we get cut every summer for seasonal promotions to become supervisors. And they're staffed in our pools. They're staffed at our beach. I have 2 sergeants that work 2 tours at Orchard Beach with 6 city seasonal aides that work with them. Now, the aides are just security eyes and ears for us. And the 2 sergeants that are working are the ones that provide any type of enforcement of issuing of summonses of any kind and dealing with the quality of life. In our pools, we have 2 sergeants out of all the pools we have in the Bronx, 1 in Van Cortlandt and 1 in Crotona, a critical pool. As you all might know, it's highly visited, and we get a lot of problems there, so I should tell you there. There's only 4 CSAs working in this pool with the 1 sergeant. All the other pools I maintain with city seasonal aid work. They only come in the summer, averaging maybe 2 to 3 officers there. I have 1 mounted sergeant that works out of Van Cortlandt, and I utilize him as much as possible with his 1 mounted officer. So if they're not out there, if you see them in Van Cortlandt on their mounts, because they have to give the horses their exercise and they're out there on a mobile patrol helping me out in the north sector of the Bronx. In the south sectors and north and east, I have I have 2 full-time sergeants, 1 of which will not be back due to a death in the family for probably another 5 weeks due to taking care of the family estates. So the 1 sergeant and myself and 2 PEP officers that come in, I'm averaging maybe 1 mobile unit per day. And we try to get out there and do the 7,000 acres of patrol and any concerns that the parks have. So all in all, with the resources that I have, I try to do the best I can with what I can with everybody's complaints. Trying to have a system in the borough where the managers call me in. We have a system. We call it a request of service. They put it down on paper, and we treat it as if you went to a hospital. And depending on the need, they call it a fast track. So the severity, that's how we treat it. The worst case scenarios, we try to take it on as quickly as possible, but we don't put aside any request that comes into the borough or to my command. We always try to get and answer everything that comes through. I have a monthly meeting with the Deputy Chief of Operations, and we go over every request of service, and we find out what was done, if there was a summons issue, if there was arrest made, but most of all, is a lot of education that we go and we put out. So it's one of the toughest jobs that I've encountered being here at the Parks Department for 21 years. I have 10 years experience as a captain. The rest of it was as an officer, so I try to implement everything that I've learned as an officer as a captain now. I see a lot of faces that I've gone to community board meetings with and dealt with the concerns and hope to have answered and dealt with any other problems. So at this point, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I have one that I want to address to you, Captain, and that is the barbecues in the parks. How are you enforcing people not bringing their pits, putting them up under trees, and lighting them up to have cookouts in the parks? Because we see a lot of that.
There is a growing number, as you know, because of the way the economy is going. We have a lot of stay vacations, and they visit our parks now. I mean, there is a lot of signage in our parks as far as where you can and cannot barbecue. They're usually put up in red with white lettering as to where you can and cannot barbecue. We're not trying to go out there and be the guy in uniform because the people or the public perceives us that way. Or right away, I'm coming up to you, then there's a summons coming now. I mean, that's anywhere. Anybody in a uniform, oh, this guy's going to tell me I can't do something. Well, that's not normally the case. We like to go out and we educate the public and we let them know. And usually the first thing that comes out of them was, well, I didn't know and I didn't see a sign. And then I point up to the pole and says, well, you're barbecuing right under where the sign is. It says there's no barbecuing in this area, and then I have to tell them where they can and go. Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell the family who's already got their hot dogs and hamburgers on the grill going, pack it up, get me a gallon of water and, extinguish what you got. So what we try and do is, all right, listen, you're here, finish what you have on your grill, but I will come back. Put out the coals. You have to take them out. You can't leave them here. And in most cases, the parks have red barrels where we do allow the barbecuing, and they can put their coals into these barrels. For the hard ones that don't want to listen, then unfortunately, then we do go out and we issue a summons. That's like the last case scenario for everybody, but we like to take our job serious, but we don't want it to look like we're not there to help you. We don't want to be the bad guys. So we do give you the opportunity, or we do let them go ahead, barbecue, finish what they're doing. In most cases, they do comply and they take everything out.
Okay, thank you. I have a...
Were
you going to respond?
I wanted to add a little on to that.
Yes.
Barbecuing, as the captain said, is getting more and more popular. I think the economy has had something to do with it. I think every time we have a hot weather streak, people don't want to cook at home. They don't want to heat the apartment up any more than it already is. So being outdoors is what they want to do, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. We do have a bunch of designated areas in the borough for barbecuing. We're looking at the possibilities that we can make some more, because the demand is not going to shrink. We have to look at it carefully. We have to think about it before we do it, because it's sort of one of those camel nose under the tent kind of things. So it's something we'll do in consultation with all of you for any of the parks that we're considering. But we are looking at it as something that we need to be able to do. In the scheme of, trying to minimize the damage, which is, the situation we're in, my regular maintenance staff does talk to people. They do meet and greet them as much as possible. They give out trash bags to people so that they aren't just leaving everything behind in a mess as much as possible. And they do give people some instruction about what to do with fires and not having them under trees, and how to dispose of the coals. But, there's a limit to how many of us there are, and there's a limit to how much people will listen to what we have to say. We try to persuade people. Someone who's wearing a blue T-shirt is not going to have the same amount of respect as someone who's wearing a blue uniform with a badge on it. That's just the way of things. We do get good cooperation from the police, but they have a lot of other more serious issues to deal with in a lot of places. So we don't count on them coming in and doing the quality of life stuff on a regular basis. We try to move our park enforcement officers around as we can to respond to conditions. But barbecuing, dogs off the leash, and dog waste and litter are probably the three biggest issues that we have anywhere in any park in New York City, and particularly in the Bronx.
Okay. Pastor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Can you pass him the mic?
My question is, how are we handling education of not barbecuing in certain parks? I happen to know a family who has had an annual barbecue at a non-barbecue park for a number of years. So if you go and tell them that you can no longer barbecue in the park, they're going to say, why? I've always done this. And I mean, they've been doing it for ever since I've lived in New York. I've actually gone every year. The other piece of it is...
Don't tell me when this is. So
the other thought with the staffing issues is in CB4 we've opened up a number of new parks, and if we're having staffing issues now, and our parks are not the cleanest.
Definitely not.
They're not the cleanest. And if we're having staff issues now and Heritage Field has not opened up, I'm beginning to wonder if our parks are going to ever be the clean parks that our community deserves to have.
Well, you know, I have moved additional people into Board 4, and I made Board 4 its own sector this year. It used to be combined with Board 5. But now it has its own manager, its own level 2 supervisor. It does have more people per acre assigned to it than basically any other sector in the Bronx because of all those new parks. We're doing the best we can. They haven't given us an additional allocation of staff. That's because of the cuts that have taken place. We're hoping that, you know, as the economy turns, we will be able to have the ability to hire and bring additional people on throughout the borough. You know, I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. I assess the situation and I move resources around as best I can to take care of it. I'm hoping that you've noticed some changes in the last 2 weeks because I made the manager formalize his Sunday, Monday cleanup plans, and I reworked them a little bit for him.
How is your, on that same note, how is your relationship with other city agencies in coordination with trying to get some of these services done? I'm speaking specifically like sanitation, transportation. Do you have a working relationship wherein they can assist in some of these issues?
Well, I have a good relationship with other agencies. Sanitation helps us out a great deal. They, wherever there are baskets on park edges that are on a basket route, they pick them up for us. Every time that a sanitation packer goes by, they'll pick up the baskets and any trash that we bag up and leave near their basket. That's an arrangement that was made a couple of years ago with, you know, the deputy commissioners of both agencies. When I need help at a place, if I give them a call, they will help me. I try to reserve that for when there's, you know, something really serious because they have a lot of work to do on their own, and I understand that. They've also been very, very helpful with when we had some storms and took down a lot of trees and had wood all over the place. They were very, very helpful in assigning some of their special units to cut it up and take it away. We cleaned up last summer's storms much more quickly than we've done any in the past. I know people will always complain about how long things sit around, but we moved that, all of those trees from that bad storm we had faster than have ever been moved in my experience in the Parks Department. So I have a good relationship with them. We work with transportation, with, you know, parkway-related things, and with places where we kind of have a joint concern. They, you know, they have a grass cutting unit that is constantly in demand for all of the parkway and expressway work. So I can't really ask them to help me with those kind of things. But they certainly will come out with backup trucks and equipment whenever we need to do a special job. They're very helpful.
You know, while we're on Community Board 4, the question comes to me about Joyce Kilmer Park. The Borough President's Office put in quite a bit of money years ago for a water irrigation system, and I understand that that system is now broken. Is there any possibility that it's going to be repaired, and is there a timetable when any of that is going to be done?
Yes, actually, Sam from your office called me last week, and I Sent the plumbers there starting yesterday. They're working this week. They'll have it working by the end of this week.
Okay, good. That's good news. Ken?
Hi.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Larry. How you doing? Thank you for coming, and sorry for arriving late. We, of course, have Pelham Bay Park, which is the regional park. It's the largest park in the city system. And we have some genuine problems, as we've had discussions about in the past. And you've been very good in trying to help us out, and we do appreciate all those efforts. But it just seems to us that the amount of people using it as a result of the staycation phenomena has trebled. And I think that we need additional help. And I was just wondering if you were able to draw from other boroughs to get some assistance from, like, say, maybe Manhattan to come up on the weekends, especially for extra sanitation pickups and extra park enforcement personnel, because the barbecuing, you are correct, has gone off the charts as far as popularity goes for park users. And it's just a real problem because they're not leaving the park at 10 o'clock. They're pitching tents, and they're staying for much longer than they should be. And I just think we need to draw on some of the resources for citywide, because we are a regional park, and we are the biggest in the system. So I was just wondering if there was any help coming from elsewhere that you could draw on.
Marianne Anderson, who's the administrator there, does her best to raise funds from a variety of sources. This year she was able to fund, I think, 2 seasonal employees to help us take care of, the basic litter pickup, and they work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. In terms of getting help from other boroughs, it's very unlikely. Ken, you probably weren't here for me talking about the park inspection ratings in the other boroughs, but we're the only borough who's improved in the last year. Every other borough has either stayed the same or gone down. Manhattan has gone down. They're not overstaffed either, and they're really not in a position to send me help. They probably, from time to time, if I needed to do a blitz project during the week, they would help me. But I really don't think it's very likely that I'll get resources from other boroughs, because all of them have very difficult tasks and large parks to take care of, and high demand in them as well.
If I could just ask one more question. Maybe, in this venue here, not long ago, we had people come by and tell us about a program that's looking for opportunities for people who are looking for community service type situations, if you remember. Bronx Solutions.
Bronx Community Solutions, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if
we do utilize them.
People could be, asked to help out.
We utilize them in many of our districts. Those are community service, or people used to call them alternative sentencing. We use them in a lot of places. There are a couple of locations where we've discontinued them just because we've had some very bad incidents. One of my supervisors was put in the hospital for 4 weeks. But, in general, we use them, and I say use, but we use their services in a lot of locations. It is very dependent on transportation availability. We do have them in Pelham Bay Park on weekends. We have to be careful with how we deploy people who are, in the criminal justice system. We don't want to put them in situations where there are vulnerable populations that, might be subject to something going on.
I was thinking perhaps after the majority of the park's patrons leave on the cleanup crews, that, that type of thing.
We typically bring them in at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is our general starting time for our cleaning operation. We try to finish them up at noon, which is about when the most number of people arrive. And then in the afternoon, we do, kind of maintenance of our situation until our staff leaves. In previous years, I've been able to run 2 shifts at most of our properties. This year, we just didn't have the resources to do it at most of them. We do have an operation at Pelham Bay with the police department. Once they close Orchard Beach, they do come through and help us close down the picnic areas in Pelham Bay South. It works most of the time. Unfortunately, sometimes people are just very unwilling to leave. It might be very hot, and rather than have something akin to a riot occur, the officers decide it's time to just keep moving.
And the last thing I'd like to mention, the restroom facility in the old Howard Johnson's building, they started to renovate it. They found out that there were some structural problems with the brick facade, and now they're saying that it will not be completed until the end of the summer. With the peak periods involved during the summer of so many people using the park, we at the community board really believe, and we've contacted both Commissioner Benepe and Borough Commissioner Ponte on the subject, that it's time to expedite the renovation of this facility. And if you have to provide incentives in any way, shape, or form, that happens a lot in contracts with the city, to the contractor, or speed up the work and have that facility open before the summer ends, because right now you're using temporary facilities, and it's just not a good thing to have.
I'll look at what the status of that is. I don't supervise construction myself, but anyone who's ever had a contractor at your house, that things do happen, and it never quite goes the way you hoped it would go. But I'll find out what the situation is with that, and I'll talk to you directly, Ken.
All right, thank you.
Jose?
Jose Rodriguez, DM from Board 4. Just want to echo what my chair had mentioned and also what the deputy brought up. But my question is really a statement to the borough board and also parks. I think we should be looking at the fact that our problem is that there's a lack of manpower, and there's a lack of funding to obtain the manpower. So I think we need to start looking at ways, or innovative ways, to supplement income for the manpower, such as looking at grants and things of that nature. Also, is parks actively doing that? Because I know the Office of the Borough President, whether it's an environmental issue or a health issue, they go out, they apply for grants, they obtain the grants, and then the work is done. Can parks do the same thing as well and assist us in creating a Friends of, especially for Board 4? I mean, I understand. I'm glad that you created a new sector for our community board, but with our new parks coming up, Heritage Field, you got Mill Pond, I have Franz Siegel, Joyce Kilmer, and Claremont and Mullally. They're huge parks, and although your folks are doing the best that they can with the amount of resources that they have, unfortunately, it's just not enough. And maybe we sat down and we talked about this. Is there something that we can do seriously to sit down, identify funding, and create some type of Friends of, to look at Community Board 4 and look at our parks and see how we can tap into those individuals who complain to us, create volunteers and create Friends of, so that this way folks who live in the community can take actual responsibility. The High Line was built in record time. But it was also built in record time because it had support from community folks, and they've actively fundraised. And it is also my understanding that the High Line has its own PEP officers. They have a certain amount of PEP officers that actually are not provided by the city of New York, or the funding is not provided by the city, but it's provided by the Friends of the High Line. So I bring this to all of us here, that I think we need to sit down and talk to one another, look at our parks, look at what's happening, and attack these quality of life issues.
I'm very happy to have that discussion with you, to bring in everybody that has technical expertise on forming those kinds of groups. You probably know that it is not a quick process. It really involves a lot of grassroots organizing and bringing people in and gaining their trust and having them bring more people in who then trust them. People give money to other people that they trust. They don't really so much give it to causes, and that's kind of how private money gets raised. There is a big sports team in the board that we're talking with and we hope will be supportive of improving and enhancing our operations. We are having those discussions. We haven't had success as yet, but anybody who has influence with that organization, I think, would be very helpful to the discussion.
I mean, we can ask, but I mean, let's face it, they're a business, and businesses are about making money, and they're about looking at what they do, and they do it well. So I think it's incumbent upon government to really, research and really try to resolve the issue. You can use the community board as a fiscal conduit. I'm more than happy to organize certain volunteers that I know of, folks who have complained constantly about the cleanliness of our parks, and put them in charge. And, they can come to our office. We have certain resources, well, not resources, but we have an office where folks can sit down and meet and discuss these issues and sort of strategize and plan how we're going to attack and help you all do what you need to do. And I understand, it's hard, and you're faced with a lot of fiscal constraints and manpower, but it's tough. Every day we get phone calls from constituents saying that the parks are dirty, the parks are dirty, the parks are dirty, the parks are dirty, the parks are dirty. And I know that you guys are doing the best that you could with the limited amount of resources that you have. But at the end of the day, I quote my borough president, what's good for a certain community in the borough should be good for another community in the borough. If another community in the borough has, another community in the borough should get the same type of resources that this other community is receiving.
Thank you. Since the mic is there, Carmen?
Carmen Rosa, District Manager for Board 12. I have to agree with my colleague.
Can you pull the mic closer to you?
We're a product of our own success. We've encouraged people to use the parks, and thanks to the filtration plant, many of our playgrounds and parks have been redone and constructed. But I would like to add, maybe what we need to do also is to get all of the community, the district in the Bronx, all of the DMs, when we write our statement of needs this year and when we write our budget priorities, is to ensure that we are all on the same page requesting that we have more manpower for these parks that have been reconstructed, as well as the narrative part of it. Some of us have done it every year, but this way it's a voice of all, where all 12 of us would do the same thing, and maybe that would have some impact.
Good idea.
We'd certainly support that, and we can provide you with the costs for various staffing types and levels.
John Roberts.
Hi, John Roberts, Board 2. I want to address the issue of you use the term locking up the parks in the evening. There are 3 parks that I know of in my community board, too, that have volunteers locking up the parks in the evening. And one in particular, Prentice Park on Hoe Avenue, they've come to me with, they meet resistance from residents when they lock up the park. They'll say, well, who are you? It's a hot night. And they're very good. They wait until dusk, which I believe is the rule, but they still meet with resistance. So I'm just curious, is there a way of identifying these volunteers? Does the park have, like, some kind of card or something? So if someone says, who are you? They could say, I'm a volunteer, and I've been chosen to close up the park. And maybe that would help them a little. Because I hate for them to call me and complain and say, listen, I almost got into a fight last night because this guy was threatening me for closing the park. And they're doing a wonderful job, but can we help them right that way?
I'm happy to help people who are helping us. Well, I help anybody, but I'm happy to help people who are helping us, especially. We do have a volunteer registration process. There is an ID provided. The one caution I would give anybody who does that sort of thing is that my staff, who wears a park uniform, comes and closes up parks, 72 of them every night. They meet the same kind of resistance. My instruction to them is that if they find a dangerous situation, if they are finding so much resistance that they would be putting themselves in danger, I tell them to leave the site and call the police and have them come meet them there. And if the police can't come and meet them, I tell them don't try to lock it up. Because I don't want anyone to get hurt or, God forbid, killed because they were trying to do the right thing and lock up one of my properties. It is, a point of a lot of conflict for people. I'm happy to facilitate any of those people getting registered or anyone else as a volunteer, and we'll give them a little bit of training in how to do the work and how to mediate disputes. But I do want to put that caution in, because when it's hot and it's dark, people's behavior changes in ways that are not attractive.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I think they were concerned that parks would think they weren't doing a good job by not liking the park. So now...
No.
So I'll get back to them, and if we can explain to them that exactly what you just said. Okay.
Usually,
they have an idea, yes.
For those volunteers, the sector manager, in your case it's Mike Holosick, talks directly with the volunteers about it and gives them the same kind of discussion that I just did, but a little more, detailed version of it. But I don't want anyone to ever feel that they should put themselves in danger in order to lock up one of my facilities. That would be really very, very bad.
Okay. John Marcano.
Hi, good morning. My name is John Morano. I'm the chairman of Community Board 10. I just had a couple suggestions and also a compliment. In Pelham Bay Park, where I'm going to start, is how about putting larger garbage cans or bins, because the cans that you have there now are just not working. People are just throwing things. Not even if you're handing out garbage bags, they're not using them for that reason, because I'll walk through there and you'll see garbage all over the surrounding area of the garbage can. I don't see any red garbage bins for the charcoal. And I don't think the people are seeing it either, because I see it on the blacktop of the walkway or where people are running in the morning. So you might have to look a second time for those red bins, because I don't know where they are. Maybe you could put the larger bins on areas that the people are exiting and make them aware that that's where the bins are. Maybe we could put them there, and it'll be easier for your trucks to pick up these larger bins, if that's possible. A little more literature, and you have to get there early, like 6 o'clock, because people are pitching tents that early in the morning. But after all the parties and the barbecues, the Parks Department is doing a very good job cleaning up in Pelham Bay Park. I do have to say that. And Philip Koenig, one of your supervisors over in Orchard Beach, is doing a very good job. The cleanup, I was there the other day, about 7:30. It was immaculate. So he's doing a very good job over there. But we do have a problem. I'm going to switch over to Bufano Park, Waterbury Park. We had some problems, some drug sales after hours, and we're trying to see if we get some kind of locking mechanism. The gates, the openings, they're just open. We need actual gates and locked.
Openings.
I'm sorry. So if that's possible, we would appreciate that.
Well, let me just kind of do them one at a time. I do have some larger 3-yard containers that I just bought this year for the heavy picnic areas, and a couple of them are going to go to Pelham Bay, and some will go to Van Cortlandt and some of the other large picnic barbecue areas. So they'll be coming. I can't actually use larger barrels. It's a labor agreement that we would not use anything larger than a 35-gallon capacity trash container, because when they fill up the old 55 ones, they're very, very heavy, and for someone to lift them up into the trash truck, it can result in a lot of injuries. So that was a labor agreement. We do, as I say, use the 30-gallon ones now. I can certainly put more out there. It does seem like in some cases people could have one right next to them.
Yes.
Wouldn't make any difference. But we're always willing to, add more resources for people who are going to use them.
Right. I mean,
and
if you put those bins in the parking lot, there's a lot of room in the parking lot or right outside the parking lot into the entrance. Mm-hmm. And then even on the expressway there alongside the highway, and I'm talking about Pelham Bay Park, there's room there for a larger bin that the garbage truck could actually, pick it up.
Yeah, my thought is to concentrate the containers, as you say, at the entrance and exit points and at places where there's a historic large demand. It'll be a little bit of an experiment, and as I say, I literally just bought them this week, so I just got delivery.
We welcome.
In terms of the red coal containers, I did put out 200 of them this year. I have a few more. I'll bring more out to Pelham Bay, and we'll try to anchor them in place so that they don't turn into tables for other people's grills or whatever else. Let's see, what was the other thing?
Waterbury Park.
Waterbury LaSalle. Yeah, I can make gates and put them on. It's probably going to take me a few weeks to fabricate them. In the 90s, when I was the supervisor in that area, we didn't have gates on there because kids cut holes in the fence every night. But we can certainly give it another try and see if that helps with the problem. It is something we'll have to try to coordinate closely with the police department, and any help you can give us on that would be great.
Thank you.
Nicole, pass the mic down.
Good morning. Hi, Nicole Stent, DM for Bronx 8. I was updated, since I came in a little late, thank you, that you're going to be covering a couple of things at Van Cortlandt Park, which is wonderful. It certainly does have that need. The red bins I was going to try and tag on, but I see you said you were already going to put a few in that Van Cortlandt area, because it's certainly there's certainly a party going on every weekend.
And almost every night.
And it's a small area that they seem to focus on right by 242nd and Broadway. That's very narrow, right next to the pool.
Yes.
And it is packed. I was walking through there, and it's just amazing. It's amazing. Those red bins will be crucial, and I want to thank you also, because working with sanitation has helped, because that train station is loaded every Monday morning, every other day, just overflowing with garbage, and that area is a combination of both colleges and the whole dynamic of Broadway.
It's quite a hub.
Yes, it is. It is quite, and we appreciate your help. I did want to thank you on that piece, and ask a little bit more on the Riverdale Park, which after the storm, you all cleaned up wonderfully, all of the pieces. But I wanted to add, if it was possible, to look at that again. There's a lot of trees down there and sightings of coyotes. I'm sorry.
Riverdale on the shorefront
Park is down by
Palisades Avenue.
And it has, it's all trees. It's right above the train tracks.
Yes, no, I'm familiar with it.
It's just a whole track that had, you can imagine how many trees came down there. Trees, I mean, not just branches. And it's been quite a sighting for coyotes around that way. And I think maybe going in and just sort of cleaning out the area a little bit, it would be very helpful. One other piece, the Van Cortlandt Stadium, I know this is not your area, but I would appreciate any word. We have the artificial turf, which has,
Starting Tuesday next week.
Great, because people have been playing out there and there's just bumps in it. It's like a rug.
Yeah.
It just needs to be
I'm
pulled.
taking the big soccer goals out and putting some smaller ones in so that they don't get dragged around and rip the carpet up.
Yeah, because that's been quite a problem for the spring. Thank you. This is very, very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Jeff.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy. Two quick questions and then a comment. First, the question is, we all know that every city agency is at the bare bones in terms of enforcement, in terms of personnel. But every district in the Bronx, and probably in New York City, has had an influx of parks in the last couple of years. When city planning is going to do their community census, not once the census is recounted, and Department of Health comes up with their community health profiles every couple of years, do they figure that the enforcement of parks is going to rely on primarily on NYPD and secondary on parks enforcement? Or because it sounds kind of weird that all these parks and playgrounds are opening up and there's no manpower or person power to assist in these facilities. So who's accounting for, is it NYPD primarily and then parks enforcement secondary, or it just seems a little awkward that that's happening.
Well, I think NYPD is the primary enforcement agency for any part of New York City, and certainly the parks are included. Park Enforcement Patrol was, envisioned as a quality of life enforcement group. They've been around for 29 years now, 1981. As budgets have waxed and waned, there have been more or less officers available at any given time. I don't think it was ever foreseen that they would become, like the transit police or the housing police, the sole law enforcement agency for parks. I think that responsibility has always been for the police department. We try to deploy our resources as well as we can. And, I try not to make promises I can't keep.
My second question and then my comment. In regards to pruning, a lot was made a couple weeks ago about the individuals that were hurt, including somebody killed in Central Park. But I know, when I've called 311, the line is that trees are pruned on a 7-year pruning cycle.
Well, they used to be.
And maybe even
now
less.
We're up to 10.
Right. So is there any effort made, and maybe something we have to do at the city council to kind of, shorten that time span? Because, it's frustrating. I know from our level, when we have people come in and they're complaining about a tree that's, they're willing to take it almost into their own hands. And obviously we're not advocating that. But they're hearing that, it's going to take about 7 to 10 years for someone to come out and take a look at it. And
well, that's clearly not the case. It doesn't ever take, more than 30 days for someone to come and take a look at a tree. Usually we try to get to it within 1 week. But doing the work, it's all based on what that assessment is. There certainly has been a recognition in the last few years that, it's a very important activity, that there are dangers. Where was I going? In the scheme of things, there was a time when we said we pruned every street tree every 7 years. That was down from, an unknown timeline when no one managed anything. When we started Plan YC 2 years ago, we got an influx of forestry staff. Like any other group of individuals who are young and vigorous, they haven't all stayed with us. They've, moved on for one reason or another, and we haven't been able to backfill them. So as time has gone on, the economy turned, budgets soured. We haven't been able to replace those people. We were down to a 5-year pruning cycle, which in the scheme of, the American Society of Foresters is a reasonably good one. It is an important activity. When we do get, they all go through the 311 system. When we do get the requests, someone does come out and take a look at things quite quickly. I can't, promise that they're there within a week, but they're certainly there within 30 days. And any dead tree that is called in and noticed is removed within 30 days. But over the years, I've noticed that pretty much any resident of New York City who owns a property either wants to have a tree planted, pruned, or removed. They hardly ever feel that, it's in perfect shape, and that's just kind of the situation we're in. Would I like more resources? I'd love them. I'd love to be able to do more work in the parks themselves. But I try to deploy them as well as I can based on the urgency of the situation. There is some recognition downtown that, it's an important activity. They did give us extra money a couple of years ago when the economy was good. We're very hopeful that when the economy turns and money begins to come back in, that'll be a very high priority for rehires. It has happened that way in the past. I hope to see it happen that way again.
Thank you. And my last comment was about the rules. I know a lot of individuals made comments about the barbecuing. I think what's difficult is the language that's on the park's website about barbecuing. They talk about areas you can do it, and then it mentions if you're a large group, you need a permit. And I think that people that are saying, oh, well, I'm planning this next week. I'm not going to have time to get a permit. I'm just going to go to the closest park and barbecue. So, maybe it could be a little bit more user-friendly. I don't know if I'm nitpicking a little bit with that, but I think it just needs to be tweaked slightly or revisited because, we've had individuals come into our office and they want a permit and, they're just not within the time frame to get a permit, so they'll just basically take their barbecues into their own hands instead of abiding by the locations where you can barbecue, and you don't necessarily need a permit if you're going to be a small group. So,
if you want, we can talk about this, and I'll certainly put any suggestions that we talk about into our Bronx system. There are citywide rules for, all of the permits, so I can influence those, but I don't make them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Gloria?
Okay, I have a comment.
Can you talk into the mic, dear?
A comment more so than a question. I think I'm going to get a little bit of opposition because we're talking about what the Parks Department should do, what the Sanitation Department. We need to do a training for people who use the park. We're never going to get enough people to keep the parks clean from filthy people. I live right across the street from Crotona Park. And just last week, some of the homeowners came to me, and they want to do a petition to close Crotona Pool because the people come to the pool, sit on their property, they throw garbage in their yards, and they know this is not the park. This is someone's home across the street, and they're still doing it. So we need to train people to respect the park's property and other people's property. So, not everybody do it, but people need to learn how to respect the park. But we're not going to ever afford enough people to keep these parks clean.
Thank you. I'm very sorry to hear that that's happening. I can ask my staff at Crotona Pool to make announcements over the PA and in person on the line.
They make an announcement. The cops are there. The cops have arrested people, but new people come and do the same thing. People are doing their job, but we need to train people how to use other people's property.
Roger, could you pass the mic down?
Good morning, Chief. Roger Montesano, we've met many times, and thank you, Madam Deputy. On the barbecuing from my agency, too, we often will get the calls through the system to go to a fire in the park. So that's resources of ours, too, that are being, used for something that, and then we get there, and then we don't want to be, confrontational either, and, it is a problem for us, too. So I just wanted to make people aware of that. And then also we have injuries from people who get burnt from using the charcoal, et cetera. So that's also my agency's staff out there. But for those of us who are old enough to know, Smokey the Bear, you can prevent forest fires, right? I haven't seen that ad anywhere, but maybe that's only because it's not in New York. It's in the West Coast.
Well, that's the Forest Service.
Right. No, I understand that. But I think maybe, and my agency will work with you, I think we need, like Gloria said, we need to educate people, about this. I mean, by the grace of God, I don't think we've had any major fires started at any parks in the city because of charcoal. But during the dry season, we know we've had brush fires in the Bronx, in Staten Island, et cetera. Sometimes just by somebody flicking a cigarette out their window on the Hutch or on the Belt Parkway or whatever the case may be, and you know how bad those fires can be. So that's something that we have to think about. And to have a couple of 100 acres of Pelham Bay Park burned down way in the back because somebody was careless, that's a shame, all right? And I certainly, as a fire department rep and community officer, I would be happy to work with you on maybe, like Gloria said, let's get some education out there. And, if there are legitimate areas where you can barbecue, then people should make use of those and respect the law, because the laws are there to protect them as well. And that's what I would like to suggest, and I'm sure the deputy would agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chief. I have just a couple of quick questions regarding Board 7, as I'm up at Board 7 while the district manager is on leave. One of them is DeVoe Park, where we've had a number of complaints and letters into the office regarding the noise specifically coming from DeVoe Park. And what's happening is that the people are coming in and actually bringing in speakers for music, and it's being heard in the upper floors of some of those larger buildings there. So I'm just asking for some attention at that park on that specific issue. I know, again, it's difficult for the enforcement folks to be there regularly. But I'm also going to talk to the precinct, and hopefully maybe together we can work on that.
We'd be very happy to work on that. I'm going to assume that that's the prime weekend afternoons that we're talking about. So we'll try to spend a little extra effort on that. We don't, just to be clear, Parks doesn't issue sound permits to anyone. That's the police department. But we especially would not issue any sound permits unless there were, some kind of public-sponsored event in DeVoe Park.
No, these are just folks bringing in their own speakers.
It's way too small, and it's way too close to residences. We wouldn't do that. So it is people freelancing, and as we're able to, we do try to discourage that. I don't know if the captain's in a position to do confiscations on that stuff.
We'll work with the precinct.
We would love to work with the precinct on that.
Secondly, when a park permit is issued for a barbecue or a picnic, do they have to provide a garbage plan, a plan to clean up after themselves?
It depends on the size of the group and the history of the event with us. If we've had problems with the group and it's a large group, we ask for a bond and we require them to provide a plan for carting and for trash cleanup. If it's a smaller group, we usually don't ask for a bond, for someone's family reunion or picnic, which unfortunately a lot of those seem to leave a lot of the trash problems. But it isn't that reasonable for us to ask every family reunion to give us, a $500 bond or something like that.
But just as part of their permit application, they should at least, and if they do, to provide a plan as how they're going to remove their garbage. And if they are having a barbecue, at least a map from you to indicate where those barbecue cans for the coals are, because they may not, as John said, people may use them to put up their barbecue on, they may use them to take home with them. So at least maybe a map from the department to show where those barbecue pit coals should be going.
That's an idea that I really like. It's something I've been working on. We started with Pelham Bay with designated barbecue areas. I want to work on that for all of our sites, and I'm hoping to do that this winter. I think it's a very good idea.
And then just finally, most of the folks, and it was mentioned earlier, that are coming to the parks are coming relatively early. And there was a suggestion made to me at Board 7 about how during those early morning hours, whether it's from 9 until 10, 9 until 11, where people are just getting there and beginning to set up, as if, again, manpower obviously being an issue, if a coordinated effort between PEP and the precincts and the community affairs office, maybe specifically, can be out there that early in the morning to kind of stop folks from setting up before they've gotten to the point where they've already set up their barbecue, everything is hot, and they're eating, that you have to go out and make a very difficult, conversation with the folks. But maybe even earlier, that you can kind of stop it before it even starts. So maybe some coordination between the community affairs officer and the PEP officers.
We'll work with that. What we have done in previous years when we had just a little bit more staffing was we had some people known as greeters. They wore orange polo shirts and khaki pants. They gave out information. They talked to people about the rules. They kind of provided a welcoming presence in some of our high-traffic areas. Unfortunately, that was one of the victims of, one of the rounds of budget cuts. We are hoping that, as I say, when the economy turns, it's something that we'll be able to bring back. There is a volunteer version of it that we rolled out kind of this summer, so that if people go to our website, they can volunteer to be a park greeter and wear that same uniform, kind of perform the same function. We're not looking for anyone to confront people. Just as I was talking about before with the park closing, that's not a situation we want to put anyone in. But we do find that a lot of people respond positively if you give them information, you speak politely to them, and you provide them with, trash bags or other resources. So it is something that we've rolled out in a couple of sites in the Bronx, but we haven't had, an overwhelming number of respondents.
Thank you.
Jim?
I just want to emphasize what Ms. Alston and some others have said about education. Education has to turn into organizing. Councilmember Foster has a Friends of Parks Council, which tries to find 1, 2, or more people for each of its parks, open spaces, trees, whatever someone claims is a green area for them. It's difficult work, but we have to organize a couple people for all of our parks and playgrounds. I know Ms. Cipriano does a good job at that, but we all need to be supportive of her and organizing ourselves and organize something. I take care of the 2 trees in front of my building. And we just all have to get involved in forming committees around each of our parks. Thank you.
Reverend Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Just 2 points. Tom was mentioning that about the community affairs officers meeting there early in the morning. I know that when picnics are happening at Mullally Park, they're getting there at 6 a.m. to stake off their territory. And especially around the holiday, the 3-day weekends that we have, they're getting there at 6 a.m. So 9 o'clock is really too late. They're getting there 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. In terms of the family reunions, and I think you mentioned that it's hard-pressed to get a bond from a family reunion for $500. If they are the ones that are continually leaving our parks dirty and leaving the trash, what an incentive that you're going to lose your $500 if you don't clean up after yourself.
And we do use that tool, but we try to use it judiciously because not everyone who holds an event is going to leave a problem. When people have a history of problems, that's when we use that tool more. We don't start out assuming that they're going to be, messy, for lack of a better word.
Understood, but make it clear across the board.
Maybe a smaller amount for smaller crowds.
Yeah. But whatever it is, I mean, it's an incentive. If I know I'm going to lose $500 because I left my water bottle on the ground, I think I'd clean up.
But we are kind of in the midst of a multi-agency anti-litter campaign. I don't know if people here have heard about this yet. It isn't rolled out, and I might kind of be speaking a little out of turn, but there is an initiative to coordinate among all of the city agencies, and I mean all of them, from the mayor's office to roll out an anti-litter campaign for the whole of New York City. We've done some elements of it in some places in the Bronx this summer, but when I last got information on this, it was going to roll out a little bit more formally citywide sometime late this year and hope to be in full swing for next summer.
Good. Well, Chief, I want to thank you, and I also want to thank the captain for your presentations this morning. It was quite comprehensive. We got some good news, we got some disappointing news, but we also look forward to working with you in terms of trying to make people more aware of their responsibilities in keeping the parks clean, as well as helping to try and see if we can't get some people to adopt our parks, because that, too, is a great need. And I just want to thank you again for being here this morning.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank everybody for the very kind compliments that you gave us. I am proud of my staff. I don't do that much picking up of litter myself, but we have a lot of very good people who work very hard for us in, difficult conditions. I appreciate that everybody recognizes that. We do want to accomplish our mission of, clean, safe, and attractive parks. We do want people to come and enjoy themselves, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and we especially want children to come and get some exercise and, avoid any obesity problems, and live a healty life. That's what we're here for. And all of you know how to get a hold of me. If you don't, come see me. I'll give you a card. Because I always respond to everybody's requests.
Thank you again. Okay. We'll now go right into the demonstration of the new poll site voting system from the Board of Elections. Valerie Vasquez is the Director of Communications, and I want to thank you for your patience with us this morning, Valerie.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'd first like to thank you for having me and introduce our HAVA staff who are here. We have Roberto, Stephanie, and Dana. A trained HAVA staff. Before we go into the actual demonstration, I wanted to give a little background in terms of what the Board of Elections is doing in terms of educating the public. We have procured 5 mobile trucks, and maybe as you came into this building, you saw the trucks that were outside. These trucks basically transport staff as well as sets of these ballot marking devices and scanners from site to site. We have redesigned our website to include information on where you can find a demonstration near you. So voters or members of the public can punch in their zip code and they can find where the nearest demonstration is being held. They also have information on what the new poll site voting system is. Ultimately, we will have videos as well, a tutorial on how to use the machines. We have dedicated staff. We've hired 20 temp staff who have been trained on the new system and go out and do outreach. We plan on doing a dedicated mailing to the city's 4.5 million registered voters. When your mailbox, when you receive, come maybe next week, you'll begin receiving your information notice that has your poll site and your EDAD. Along with that, there'll be an insert on this new poll site voting system. So that's another way that we hope to reach the public. We so far have held 53 demonstrations of this new system, and we've had 3,090 participants. We sent out letters to every community board throughout the city of New York, every district manager, every elected official, senior centers, libraries, and good government organizations, asking that they help us spread the word and that we can have demonstrations working in conjunction with them. We've sent out newsletter content to all our elected officials, hoping that they can dedicate some space in their newsletters to inform the public about this. We are also taking ads, full-page ads, and local community newspapers. We will do radio spots and PSAs, and we will also plan on purchasing outdoor advertising space. So it's basically in subway car cards, in the bus shelters, on the buses themselves, and within the buses we'll also have advertisements. And that really is hoping to drive people to either call our phone bank or visit our website so they can obtain information. So with that being said, I'd like to give you a brief demonstration on this new system. In January of 2010, our commissioners selected the new poll site voting system. This BMD that you see here is the BMD you've seen at your poll sites for about 2 years. This really is a system that was designed for disabled voters to be able to vote independently and privately. Anyone can use this system, but it was really meant for someone who lacks manual dexterity. So there are various ways that you can actually mark your ballot. You can mark your ballot hearing the names read aloud to you, so you would hear it via audio, so you would have headsets for that. If you lack manual dexterity, you could use a sip and puff device. And many individuals who are either paraplegic or wheelchair bound that do not have any use of their hands are very familiar with this technology. And it literally is sipping and puffing into that straw that would allow you to navigate the ballot. Then there are rocker paddles as well for individuals that lack the manual dexterity. We have the touch screen, which basically where we can make the font very large. We can change the resolution and the color scheme of it that assists voters. And there's also Braille. But for the most part, most voters will now, starting September, will mark their ballot using a pen and marking their ballot that you have in front of you. We've left everyone, if you look in front of you, you'll have a demonstration ballot. That really is a mock-up of what you will see come September 14th. We ask you to start filling them in just so that way you can have an opportunity to scan your ballot. But this is the ballot. This ballot was designed according to New York State election law because some people, the common complaint is the font size of that particular ballot. The way we've addressed that is that we will have magnifying sheets available at each of the poll sites so that you can place the sheet on the ballot itself to magnify the font. A voter would just have to simply mark their ballot using pen, filling in the ovals. Once they filled in the oval, they would literally take it to the scanner, feed it into the scanner. The scanner will tabulate the votes. The ballots fall into the double locked box at the very bottom of the system. Ultimately, at the end of the night, the polls will in fact be closed. The police officers will take all those ballots back to the Board of Elections offices. And again, it's a checks and balance for us, because it in fact allows candidates, allows for a recount, because not only is it, yes, it is tabulated via computer, but we have the tangible ballots on hand as well. Other than that, it's really a simple system. Our tagline as we go throughout this campaign is "It's as easy as 1, 2, 3." You have a sample of some of our brochures in front of you. This is what we've been giving out at demonstrations, as well as our frequently asked questions. But really, what we want to do, and the way that we determine is what a successful public education campaign is really allowing people to use the new system, marking their ballot, asking questions, seeing how easy it is. So when they walk into the poll site in September, they A, know that there is a new way to vote, and B, are comfortable with the technology. In addition, we have learning centers, and in the Bronx, at our Bronx Borough Board of Elections office, we have a room within the Bronx office that is set up like a poll site, and it's open from 10 to 4, Monday through Friday. There's alternating evening hours, and on the weekends, once a month, we'll be open either on a Sunday or Saturday, and that alternates as well. And anyone can come off the street. There's no appointment necessary, and we have trained staff there to help you and walk you through the process so that you can ask questions as well. But really, I'd like to open it up to questions. I'd like people to, you'll all have an opportunity to try the system. So to make it easier, if you could just start filling it in so that the scanner can, in fact, read your votes. But if you have questions,
Kenneth?
It's a comment. I'm Bronx Community Board 10. And I just want to compliment you on your staff, because they came up to our board office in an education program, and we had a room full of people, and it was very helpful, and a lot of people did appreciate it. So thank you, and I would urge my colleagues to take advantage of that offer for the public education program. They're really great.
Thank you. I will say I'd like to thank everyone here, because we have visited various community boards throughout the city. And I will say that out of the community boards, I get the most requests for us to attend demonstrations within the community itself. Because as you know, everyone that attends a community board is obviously civic-minded. You either represent a tenant organization or senior center, and out of that, I would say that we get most of our requests come out of community board meetings. So I'd like to thank you for that as well.
Carmen.
Hi, Carmen Rosa, District Manager for Board 12. You also came to Community Board 12 when we had the last board meeting, and it was very, very successful. What I want to ask is it possible to have a training site at the community board? We have what we call a town hall, as you saw, and we do have the space and the area where training can take place. And being that we're so far away from the south side, it's very difficult for people to get there, transportation, et cetera. So is there a possibility of having something like that done?
Yes. Actually, Roberta will hand out, we have a flyer that basically has, we set up a mailbox, so it's demo at the Board of Elections. And what you would all you have to do is literally send us an email stating the date, the time, and the location you'd like to have us. We actually ask for 2 weeks lead time just so we can set up transportation and staffing. But all you need to do is send us out an email, and we will definitely make ourselves available.
Because we can probably do it on a weekly basis, if not every other day basis.
Yeah, definitely. Just give us the dates, the location, and the times, and someone will be in contact with you just to set up logistics.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jeff?
Hi, thank you very much. I know the council member had a couple of questions she wanted me to make sure that were addressed. So I'm a 75-year-old senior, and it's primary day, and I'm going to vote. Do I wait online and start filling this out, or do I wait till I get to the machine to start filling this out?
The process remains the same in that you would go to your EDAD table. the poll worker would confirm that you are in fact registered to vote in that particular district. You would sign in the poll book, and now you would be handed a paper ballot. You'd be handed a paper ballot and a privacy sleeve. We will also have, and I don't have them with me because we placed the order, but we haven't received them yet. If you look in your brochures, there's also a privacy booth. So we'll have a booth available, various booths available, where individual can go and literally mark their ballot in privacy. But there's nothing to prevent you from, while you're standing online waiting to scan your ballot, to mark it there. So there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. There's no restrictions from you from marking your ballot that way. But we also have an added mechanism for privacy for you to vote at the privacy booth. And then what you would do is you can insert your ballot into the privacy sleeve to ensure that no one can in fact see your ballot, and then you'd feed it in. But we'd also like to say that you can feed your ballot in any orientation. So the ballot that you have in front of you, where the very front, where you have all the contests, you can literally turn it around and feed it into the scanner, and it will in fact read your votes that way. So it can go in any orientation.
Okay, and my second question is, a lot's been made recently about the upwards of 10 to 20,000 votes that may be lost because of the overvoting, and the whole, you get a green signal even if you've overvoted. Has there been anything done about that? Are you still getting a green signal if you overvote?
We have to adhere to the state board of elections. So they're the governing body. So it's up to them to make those determinations. But as of now, because there has been no change, if you in fact fill in your ballots in any one contest, you overvote and you feed it into the scanner, there will be a notification to tell you that you have overvoted in this particular contest. You have the option to reject, and it will reject that ballot, and you have an opportunity to recast your ballot properly. Or you can feed it knowing that in that particular contest, your vote won't be counted, because of course you only will not be counted, because of course you only have one vote. So to make it easier in terms of in the demo ballot, I think it's choices of ice cream selections. But let's say it was an assembly race. So if an individual voted for 2 candidates of the assembly and tried to feed it into the scanner, then it would notify you. In this particular contest, you voted for 2. You only have a choice of 1. Would you like to reject that ballot and recast it so it'd be voided out? Or do you want to accept it, and we'll accept that vote, but in that contest, your vote will not be counted?
But you still get the green, but it's still a green light that comes on that says that.
It is still.
Is there any reason why? I mean, like I said, I'm a 75-year-old senior. I see green, that means go.
There is also a poll worker there that will be standing nearby to assist the voter. So if there is some form of confusion, is what does this mean? The poll worker, the bipartisan team, will be there to let you know. But I also encourage everyone to overvote. If that's something that you're interested in seeing, how you're prompted, then overvote on your ballot, just so you can see hands-on what it would look like.
Wendy?
Now, Wendy Rodriguez, Chair of Community Board Number 6. Thank you very much, and thank you, Valerie. This papers, are they going to be filled in with ink or pencil?
It'll be blue or black ink, and the inks will be.
Now, let's say I mark one, and then I realize I made a mistake, and I cannot erase it. What do I do?
Well, the procedures that we have in place is that you have up to 3. You have 3 opportunities. So if you realize either at the poll site, as you're filling it in, oops, I made a mistake, then you would go to the poll worker. The poll worker, there are detailed procedures for them to void out that ballot. So it would be voided on the ballot itself. They'd put it into a voided envelope, and then they would give you a new ballot. And then you take that new ballot and then fill it out properly. So you have up to 3 chances.
Yeah. Okay. And also, there's a lot of senior citizens in the buildings that have no access to the internet or to go into your website or anything. How are we going to train these people?
Training them as if they're poll workers, or just for the average public?
For the average public to go and vote, so that they will know. Because I used to work in the polls, and I had a lot of work to do with the seniors that would come in, and even with the old way, they wouldn't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Because the seniors are at home. They don't read the newspapers. They hardly watch. They only watch their soaps on TV, and they had no idea how to vote.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with this now?
So that's why we've tried to make our public education campaign as inclusive as we can be. So that's why we have radio spots and PSAs and full-page ads and newsletters that'll be sent out to every registered voters, as well as hopefully the personal outreach for you to go to a demonstration. But really, that's why at every demonstration that I give, I basically say to everyone that we're working together and we need everyone that's in that room to be ambassadors for the board, because we can't reach all 4.5 million voters. So we need you. So if you attend a demo, go home and tell your grandmother or your friends or your sisters that there's in fact a new way to vote, and drive them to our phone bank and drive them to our website or to call us so that we can do a demo in their buildings. I mean, we don't, if anyone asks for us to have a demonstration, there has not been an instance where we have rejected it. So if it's a matter of going into your in your community center of your building, we'll do that. It's just that there has to be that interest. Someone has to reach out to us. But that's really the only ways for us to reach out to educate the voters, fortunately.
Will the poll watchers be able to get the results of the balloting at the end of the day?
Yes. At the end of the day, when the polls close, there will be a tape that once the poll worker closes the polls, it'll be a printout. A tape will come out that will have the unofficial results, yes. And at the end, once we're finished, we can show you that as well. Once everyone casts their ballot, you can see what it looks like to close the polls.
Okay. Jose?
Jose Rodriguez, Board 4. Are there any other states that are utilizing this machine? And if so, have there been any problems or any issues that they've experienced that you guys have addressed?
There were trial throughout the state. There was some trial studies basically of this, and there were other states and other counties throughout the state that use similar machines, but not necessarily this DS200, because this machine was literally created in accordance for them to get approval from the State Board of Elections for certification. So the election system software, the EMS that's basically built into this is unique to New York State. So,
Nicole?
Hi, Nicole Stent, Board 8. 2 questions. One, what happens if you were to undervote and you put it in the scanner? Does it let you know? Can you get it back? Can you redo it?
You can undervote, and there is no notification if you do in fact undervote.
So
but you can. There's no prompt. So you will not be notified if you undervoted in a particular
contest. So if I have a
contest.
senior or someone who has other difficulties and they did undervote and didn't realize it, there won't be any way to inform them.
There is
of
no
that.
way for us to inform them. Just like if you went into a voting in the lever machine and you went in and you opened the curtain and you went in, there's no notification to tell you I didn't vote for council, but I did vote in this borough president's race. There's no notification. So it follows that same premise.
And a second question is, what happens if there's an electrical outage or if there is a fuse blows? You're doing a number of these scanners. We've all had scanners at some point that mess up in some capacity. What is the backup
We've purchased additional backup power supplies. So it's an uninterrupted power supply. So if in the event there was some type of blackout or something, these machines have a backup battery built in. So
each
individual machine has a backup power supply.
Excellent. Thank you.
Maria? Oh, she is. Okay. Did I see a hand up over here? Yes, Bernice?
Hi, I'm Bernice from Community Board 5, Bernice Williams. The only problem I see, because I am a coordinator at the poll sites, the problem I see is this is going to be very time consuming. The people are going to come in. You're going to check to make sure they vote. You're going to give them the ballot. Where are they going to sit? A lot of these poll sites don't even have room for their staff to sit. I mean, they have to sit and fill these out, correct?
They
can't stand, so they're gonna have to sit.
That's why we have a team. The Board of Elections has a team of surveyors. So we have to go out to the 1,369 poll sites throughout the city of New York and take schematics. And the schematics have changed because obviously you need more space. Because you don't just have the lever machine. Now you don't have the lever machine anymore, but you have multiple machines. So the BMD, the scanner, the privacy booth, and dependent upon how large your poll site is, how many voters are in that particular ED-AD, you may have more than one of each of these systems as well. So we have taken schematics. Some of the poll sites that we've used in the past simply do not meet our needs, either because the size is too small or if they don't have necessarily the power, the amperage that we need, and they unfortunately could not be a poll site, and we've had to select new sites.
How will the voters know that their poll site will no longer be used? Because and how will they be notified for one thing? And how are you determining what the alternatives are?
Well, if there's a poll site change, it has to be notified. It has to be pre-cleared through the Department of Justice as well. We notify the voters. They receive two notices. The first is that there is, in fact, a poll site change in their particular district, and then they get the information notice. And the information notice tells them their ED-AD and their poll site. So if there is, in fact, a poll site change, they get a special notification that their poll site has been changed to this new site.
Nicole.
I'd love to get that list of the changed poll sites because I didn't realize that it was going to need a larger location. I'm particularly concerned and would like to invite you to our Kingsbridge, Marble Hill Kingsbridge community, because it is an area that I'm hoping there will be a large enough site, but it's also an area that's going to need some special attention in terms of the training or the exposure to this new type of document. I'm glad to hear you're going to have the mirrors because it's very difficult for those of us who are over 40 to see.
And some of the poll sites, we didn't have to necessarily close that poll site and select another. We've maybe had to change out the way that it was laid out, so just so that to allow for us to comfortably conduct the election. So I don't want to say that there have been numerous instances where we've had to change poll sites, but it has occurred, and in those instances, the voters will be notified. The Department of Justice was in fact pre-cleared, and that's why we've had to change the site because it was just would not be a functioning site for our purposes. As far as the font size of the ballot is actually determined by New York State election law. They tell us the font, the size, and the full-face ballot layout. So unfortunately, we are restrained in that sense. But what we do provide is the magnifying sheets for voters to enlarge the font. And if, in fact, you have a voter, this machine, I just want to we reiterate that it's not only for people with disabilities. Anyone can use the ballot marking device. So if you find that a voter just simply can't see it, isn't comfortable with marking their ballot with a pen, they can, in fact, go to the BMD and the ballot marking device will mark the ballot for them. And it doesn't change in any way the absentee process. That still remains the same, voting by absentee ballot. Some people ask us that if, does it in any way affect it? And it does not. People can still have the option to be permanent absentee or you vote by absentee ballot as well.
Wendy?
This part here, this part here that tells you vote for one or vote for two, I think this should be bold so that people could see it. Because if I get this automatically, I just vote for one and keep on going, So it says here, vote for any two. That should be bold so that people could really see it. Because, first of all, it is so small. And like I said, I would just mark one and then I'd be on the voting and I would know it.
Yeah. Again, really, the ballot and the design of the ballot was something that is determined by election law. I can take it back to our candidate records unit and see if there's anything we can do about about bolding the selections if you have a vote for two.
Yeah.
I'll take it back to the office and see, but from what I've always been told, it's something that was determined by election law.
Right. Jeff?
I hope this is just a general demonstration ballot, and it won't look like this on general election day. But you have on the back questions.
In what sense? It will look like this.
No. Well, let me get my question out
Oh.
then. There's questions on the back. Specifically in November, we're going to have a lot of referendums having to do with the city charter and the Charter Revision Commission. It doesn't let me. There's no way. I don't see anywhere where it says turn over to answer questions. And I understand that the lever machines were very ambiguous about where the questions were as well. But at least if we're going to use this, can we give some indication that there, I mean, especially with the Charter Revision Commission and the amount of money and tax dollars that were given to this commission, there has to be some way of letting people know that the questions are on the back.
And again, that really is also in accordance with election law. And on the very right, you'll see ballot proposals are located on the other side of this ballot. And that's exactly how you'll see it.
People are not going to look at that.
I mean,
that's really because in New York State election law, we have to have a full face ballot. So you have to have all the contests on this one page. So what we had to do is the proposals and the questions go on the other.
No, I understand that, but I mean, at least here couldn't say turn over or more questions on the back or something like that?
That has to do with this field being purposely whited out, is just so that the scanner can read it properly. So that's why demo, it's only because it's in fact a demo, is that normally you wouldn't have anything typed on this very bottom. But that is not going to change. That's the way the election law was written. That's where the notification will appear.
That's terrible. Bernice?
So we'd have to rely on the training of the poll workers to encourage voters to in fact turn the ballot over so that you can in fact cast your ballot for so you can vote for those proposals.
I understand that.
Hi, I'm just a little bit confused. The ballot marking device machine, you're going to use that. So you take, after marking your ballot, do you feed it into that? Oh, okay. Okay, because it used to be ordinarily you put it in a folder.
Before, these will never tabulate. Would never tabulate the vote. But in the past, in years prior, it would go into an envelope and we would take it back and we would vote. But now, because we have the scanner, all votes are in fact fed into, all ballots are in fact fed into the scanner. So either you vote using your pen and you scan it in, or if this machine marks your ballot, it still is fed into the scanner.
Very good. But so this is going to be a twofold process.
Well, the process will be is if I'm an able-bodied...
If I'm disabled.
Okay, so if you're disabled, you'd go to your... We determine that you are in fact eligible to vote in that particular district. Then once you go into your ED80 table, they tell you that this is in fact the machine that you'll be voting on if you want to use a B and D. The poll worker would be there. They'd feed in the ballot into this, and then you'd vote using one of these functions.
Right.
Once the ballot is in fact marked, then the poll worker would assist you in taking it to the scanner, feeding it into the scanner, and essentially tabulating your vote there.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if a voter only partially or puts a check mark or an X instead of filling in these little oval circles?
Okay. Part of our public education campaign has been we ask for voters to fill in the oval.
Instances.
But if they don't, and if they put a check mark, as long as there's some, it's very sensitive. So as long as there's some marking within that oval, the scanner will in fact pick it up. We don't want to encourage that. We're asking to voters to fill in the oval, but it was designed with such a sensitivity that if you in fact, as long as there's some marking within that oval, it will detect it.
Okay. Maria? We can't hear you.
Is there any contingency in place if in the event the scanner breaks down in the polling site?
Yes, we will have backup scanners for those. Mm-hmm. And we will, the process will remain the same. As you all know, we have AD monitors and we have technicians throughout the field on election day. That will remain the same, with roving teams going from site to site and technicians that are ready to remedy any of the problems.
These backup machines will be on the premises, or will they have to come from the board?
It depends on the size of the poll site.
Okay, now if
a poll site has two scanners, then what we would do is then we would ask all voters to vote on that, scan their ballots on the functioning scanner until the technician would come and repair it, and then it would be fully functional.
Now, what happens if it's only one scanner? what happens if the machine breaks down? Normally, a voter would get an A ballot to cast their vote rather than to lose the voter. So what happens now?
We would then have the backup machines are either on. The board's policy as it stands now is we've ordered multiple machines per poll site. So we wouldn't have an instance where there would just be one scanner. There would be a minimum of 2 at each of the poll sites.
Okay.
For that very reason.
Oh, Denise.
I'm sorry, good morning. Denise Hudson. Just as a suggestion, when you go out to your locations to provide the training and educate folks on the new voting system, I would suggest that you inform them of the possibility that many of the locations that they went to vote before may have changed. You know, as part of when you're going out, let them know to be sure to look at their notices when they do get them. Because I know for myself, when I go to vote, I know where I'm accustomed to going to. So I'll end up going to that regular location. So just as part of your training, remind people when they get their information at the time to vote, look at the locations to make sure that their locations have not changed.
That's a great idea. Actually, it's even, I guess, taking it even further. By the end of this week, Friday, our notifications will be sent out to print. So what we can do is when we have our staff going out, we can have a list by borough, and if there were any changes, we can notify them. You know, we're in the Bronx. I'm at a Bronx demo. These are the 3 sites that changed in your borough, so we can educate the voters. So we'll do that. We'll do that too to see if there were any changes in your borough.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay.
So if
next? You want to give a demonstration?
Okay. So I don't know if anyone wants to use the BMP, but if you mark your ballot, come in.
You know what? Just before you do that, why don't I just close the meeting so that those who want to go can leave? Thank you all for being here. I want to, first of all, acknowledge John Roberts. This will be his last meeting with us as Community Board 2's manager. We wish you well in your retirement. And of course, we want to welcome the new chairperson of Community Board 2 to our meetings. We are very happy to have you with us. Give me your name again. Thank you. We wish you well in this new endeavor. And for all of you who are going away very shortly, have a safe and healthy summer. And this meeting is officially closed.